to talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Of course, the decisions of the United Nations in the past half year, both in September and December, have created an incredible hope for the future. We have this overarching Sustainable Development Goals as the vision for the next 15 years, including actually the whole climate agenda. You can say that it's not only a vision, it's a new theory, it's a new understanding, it's kind of a framework for the work development we have been designing here. And the important thing about realizing this vision, this new framework, is basically to understand the total interdependence of the goals. That we cannot eradicate poverty without attacking the huge inequalities in this world and without taking care of avoiding further environmental disasters and climate change. If we don't have that interdependency in order, we will not at all have the resources to deal with the poverty in this world. And if we don't build on peace, justice and inclusive societies, we will not be able to reach the goals. That's the first paragraph. The second one is, we need now dedicated measures and very strong global partnerships to support the implementation, and then very early implementation. It's about holding together the good partnership between government, civil society and business community that belongs to the Sustainable Development Goals. But it's also about mobilizing public finance to a very large extent, both for transfer of ODA to the least developed countries, because without that, they will not be able to live up to the expectations of the Sustainable Development Goals. But it is also across the world the necessity to mobilize more public resources through a determined cooperation against tax evasion and tax havens, so that we can give each and every country the necessary national resources to meet the extreme high level of investments we need to mobilize to make this a reality. We also have to realize that it is the private sector that will have to mobilize most of the resources. And this has to be done through a very close partnership. Even small and medium-sized enterprises will have to come on board. We will have to improve corporate behavior. We will have to encourage capital funds, pension funds, and so on. And we will have to make governments create the frameworks, including the taxation frameworks, that makes it obvious that the green investment is not only the best investment for the future and for mankind, but the best investment for companies here and now. This interaction is crucial. And we are talking, as it has been said already at the opening, of trillions of dollars in the next 15 years that has to be invested, and has to be invested in the right way, in the green. We of course also have to build capacity. Data and information is a very important part of it. Also, the obligation of the United Nations to serve. It's nurturing the potential of science, technology, and innovation, and is addressing the global issues of trade, debt, and government, economic governance. Third point here is how to advance this implementation. The integration, the multi-stakeholder action between governments, but not only governments, local governments, cities, is very important. They have actually more resources and more obligations in this field than national governments in general, and the whole finance industry and civil society, and ordinary citizens. I think it's very important to understand that in advancing the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, we have set a very progressive agenda. And that's the good part of the story. The other side of the point is that much of the public opinion and many in national governments, including many ministers of finance, haven't bothered with it. They don't understand it now totally. How much of a transformation, how much of a different thinking we need to mobilize in order to do this. And then of course there is the whole process of accountability about what governments have committed themselves to in September and December. We try to take initiatives on that in New York. The Secretary General mentioned the signing ceremony and the associated arrangements in April. I will take the initiative to a high-level meeting, series of high-level discussions actually the day before, on April 21st, in tandem with the Secretary General's high-level signing ceremony, where we put exactly the focus on the partnerships, the necessity of not only governments, cities, and so on being involved, but also the continued engagement of civil society, and not least the presence of the progressive business community and capital institutions, so that we can get this process started much earlier than we actually did when we decided on the Millennium Development Goals 15 years ago. This is about all hands on deck. This is about very strong commitment in the further process if we were actually succeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Woodcock. Thank you. Before we move on, I just want to see if I can make sure I've understood, because I think this is going to be a theme about how we move from this political level down to the action level. You're going to have to work through partnerships, through cities, through business, through various civil society players, through the financial community. Business and finance is of particular interest, obviously to me, also to many of our audience. They tend to respond to two things: certainty and incentives. Certainty because it reduces risk, incentive because it improves returns. Is that, how do you think, because a lot of the, how do you move from the level of the SDGs and some of the wording you said about taxation, about regulation, how do you move from that to encourage business and finance to be enthusiastic and excited about this?
Well, I think, first of all, what I have experienced from Addis to New York in September, to Paris in December, is we have already a very strong progressive global business community very engaged in this. But of course, there are maybe three keywords that governments has to fulfill. One is transparency of the markets. Second is stability in the market conditions, and third is that these market conditions are clearly pro-sustainable development. And that's also, as I said, about taxation, but other kind of regulations, taking this incentive, so black investment, to coal investment, and plus positive incentives to green investment.
So tilting the playing field towards the good stuff and away from the bad stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so second up, Cristiano Figueres, as I know to many of us, can you give us some insight into Paris, and particularly about how you think the world needs to go about making Paris happen? And I believe we shouldn't forget that we have to go beyond Paris. I assume you're already preparing for COP26.
We are actually. Yes, well, thank you, Michael. So yes, Paris was nothing short of miraculous, but now we have to actually make that miracle become the reality that we all envision. And here I would like to say quite clearly that, forgive me, President of the General Assembly, when I representing the United Nations up here, the United Nations, in its infinite wisdom, created two processes in parallel. one for the SDGs, one for climate. Understandable, because one was a visionary process of what kind of a society do we want to move toward, and the other one was a legally binding agreement within a treaty body. Understood. Can we afford to continue to practice the fallacy of that duality? No. Now, 2016 is the year in which that duality must be taken off the table, once and for all, and never again separated, in fact, even not by negotiating processes. We have to bring these two things together. That is the way that we see it from the national economy perspective. So, I looked at the SDGs, and for me, it's actually pretty clear. There are at least 5 sustainable development goals that determine whether we're going to get to the climate goals that we have imposed upon ourselves. Energy, very clearly. The kind of energy that we invest in over the next 5, 10, 15 years will determine whether we do our job on climate change. Economic growth, same story. The kind of economic growth that we have, the carbon intensity of that economic growth will determine whether we get to the climate change on time. Industrial innovation and infrastructure, same thing. Unless we have dramatic innovation and resilient infrastructure, we will not meet our climate goals. Cities and communities, and I'm going through the sustainable development goals. Unless we have smart cities and resilient communities, we will not get to our climate goals. And unless we dramatically change our consumption and production patterns, we will not get to our climate goals. So those 5 determine together whether we get to our climate goals. Now, very interestingly, we have 3 sustainable development goals that actually are determined by what we do on climate change. And those are very clearly poverty, health, and hunger. Unless we're able to face climate change in a timely fashion, we will have levels of poverty around this world that go to such scale that we will never be able to end poverty. I think we can agree that that is morally inadmissible for every human being alive today. We cannot accept that that is where we're going to. So unless we address climate change, we will never be able to eradicate poverty. Unless we address climate change, we will never be able to have food security and be able to conquer hunger. And unless we address climate change, we will, of course, not be able to deal with some, not all, but some of the health impacts. So the Sustainable Development Goals and climate are one and the same package. Either they are determining whether we do climate, or they actually are determined by climate. The interesting thing is, however, that addressing climate is the one and only goal that we have, intricately linked, that has a ticking clock embedded in it. All of the other goals, including poverty, that is closest to all of our hearts, could, in theory, be done gradually and according to our possibilities. Not with climate. Climate has a ticking clock. And because it is the greatest threat to well-being of our generation and future generations, we don't have an option. We have to address climate. And in fact, I'm going to pose here, say, a heretical statement. We have to address climate change in an even faster way than our wonderfully and well-beloved Paris Agreement says. Because we have to reach peaking very, very quickly in order to protect the most vulnerable and in order to protect developing countries. So that is the ticking clock that we have there. And we will only be able to do that if we are able, Michael, to come back to your second question there, if we're able to take the first step very quickly, which is take all of the INDCs, all of the national climate change plans, and ensure that those are very, very quickly accelerated, implemented, because we can take the international policy framework that has been given by the Paris Agreement, devolve that into national policy, reinvestment incentives, and predictability of policy so that the capital can flow. The trillions of dollars, my friends, are very happily sitting under many pillows around the world, waiting to go into the new economy. But we have to be able to open up that window and to provide the predictability and the incentives for that capital to flow. It is doable. It is absolutely doable. If the Paris Agreement was doable, this is doable. But we do have to come all together and to do this in a way that is intentional, that is purposeful, and that does not allow us to begin to think that it is the market forces that are going to determine whether we're able to do this transformation. No, my friends, it's not the market forces. We need to create those market forces. We need to create all of the conditions so that the market then moves in the way that we know it has to move. Because we only have one direction in which we can move for the benefit of all of us, and that is toward a decarbonized and highly resilient global economy.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And there I think you saw perhaps there was a little window into exactly why we got a Paris Agreement. The persuasiveness of Cristiano played no small role in that. And also I love the elegant way that you made a land grab there for another, not just goal number 13, but also for a number of other goals. And I think that's absolutely essential, that we get the understanding of how the architecture fits together, because all these goals do overlap, and there's coming for some criticism for that. But if we move on to Adnan Amir, you and I sat on the advisory board of Sustainable Energy for All, and goal number 7 almost exactly is what we've been working on in that initiative for the last 5 years. So does that mean that your job is any easier? I open by saying no pressure, you have to deliver the renewable energy revolution, but is it at least a clear task that you have? And perhaps we can start by giving us an update on the annual meeting we just had.
Thank you, Michael. Let me say I love being invited to these initial panels of WFES because it's at the end of a very intensive 3-day general assembly. Can you hear me? Okay. It's at the end of a very intensive 3-day general assembly. You have all these very sharp ministers of energy, like Abdul Qadir Amara, watching every word I'm saying, and I have to be very careful during those 3 days. Now, I come out from that, I can say whatever I want, and I hope that over the next year they will have to go by the time we come to the next assembly so I can finally say what I think. So what I think is that we are at an exceptional time. But I can't put it too close. We are at an exceptional time in the development of the renewables industry. You know, we wait every year until your numbers come out, Michael, and what we heard was extremely encouraging this year. After last year's record, we set another even higher record of $329 billion, 1/3 of $1 trillion of investment for the first time in renewable energy industry. We've seen markets growing tremendously in different parts of the world. 150% increase in the Chilean market last year, 200% in South Africa. Huge initiatives like His Majesty the King of Morocco announcing during COP that Morocco is going to go 52% on renewables, bigger and bigger targets, 164 countries announcing renewable energy targets, and more capacity addition in the power sector from renewables every year than nuclear and fossil fuel combined. But it's still not enough. So we've done an analysis of what it's going to take to reach the doubling target of sustainable energy for all. Michael, as you know, you were involved in some of these discussions, and we found that if we are successful in achieving the doubling target by 2030 for renewable energy penetration, we have 50% of the carbon emission reduction that we need more or less there. We believe the remaining 50% can come largely from energy efficiency measures. These are the two single, economically feasible, powerful mechanisms to decarbonize, to bring us to a safe energy future. So this General Assembly session that met brought over 150 governments, 140 observer organizations, about 3,000 people in probably one of the most positive, intensive and substantive discussions on the future of renewables we've had in the history of our area. Of course, our agency is as renowned for its modesty as the higher officials of the French Republic, like Mr. Fabius, but I'm just saying this was an exceptional assembly. Three key messages have come out of this assembly for me. That there are three things that are going to be transformative in the future. One is policy, both international and national. Two is finance and what we do about it. And three is technology. Now, on policy, the Paris Agreement has been remarkable. As a side note, I've been in the UN for a long time before I left. I attended COP4, was my first COP in Buenos Aires. So you can imagine the progression of hope and frustration over the 17 years until we got to Paris, and a remarkable politically powerful outcome in Paris that has brought back faith in the process. And, you know, Christiana played an extraordinary role in this. Fabius, this lady sitting right next to me, had a little bit to do with it, Lawrence, but it was an extraordinary achievement of the international community. What it's given us is a signal of policy and predictability that has started to change markets already and perceptions of investors. I'm using one metric on policy, which I found very interesting, which is what is the impact of the outcome of Paris on the stock price of the biggest solar company in the United States, listed company. Outcome of Paris led to a 3% increase in the share price of this company, which you know. But remarkable, everybody is very pleased and so on. A few days later, the US Congress, in a rare bipartisan agreement, extended the tax credit for renewable energy equipment in the United States for a 5-year period. What happened to the stock price of this country? 30% increase. So policy is important, but domestic policy is probably more important than anything else. And unless we have secure, long-term, transparent governance and policy arrangements in place that give security to investors, we will not make the progress that we can. So this is a message to national governments, and I think that we need a lot of you to start thinking seriously about what this means in the context of policy measures we see today. Second is finance. There's a lot of money in the system. We have trillions in institutional investors. With the low interest rates over a long period of time, people are looking for places to put this money. I remember discussions in WFES we had. There was one discussion on Africa where we talked about the future of Africa. Very positive discussion. There were 5 trading companies set up in the next week in the Emirates looking at investment in Africa. So how can we mobilize financing? And here, in addition to policy, we need some sort of measure to reduce the cost of capital for investment in renewables. It's unrealistically high. We have a limited amount of public financing in the system. We will have some international public financing coming up, climate finance. If we chop that into little pieces and divide it among 120 countries, it's going to make no impact. We need to see how we take that climate financing and how we use it for leverage and as an aggregator for private investment. How do we draw down the cost of capital? How do we de-risk? How do we create risk guarantee mechanisms, for instance, that can help investors to get a sense of confidence? And if we do that, we already have the technology that's mature enough to make a huge difference as we see around the markets. Third is technologies. We know solar down 75% in 5 years, wind down 30% in 5 years, highest capacity additions. But we need to look at what's going to happen with the next generation of technologies, what's going to happen with storage. This is why all these mission innovation and breakthrough coalition initiatives are important. But in the immediate sense, we need to have a trajectory of how technology is going to be developed and how it's going to shape systems and markets in the future. Finally, we need to have another look at the two main technologies that we still have and have huge potential. Geothermal is one of them. I know we have a very passionate supporter sitting right in front of me there in the President of Iceland. You know, we're talking about 100% renewables. He's already there, so I don't know how much more he can do. It's exported. But geothermal has huge potential. We need to overcome the barriers to geothermal. We have launched the Geothermal Alliance, which has already gathered 50 countries. And I think we are on the cusp of breakthrough on geothermal deployment. And the second is we need to look at hydro again. We cannot allow long-held prejudices about hydropower to prevent us using probably one of the most available and cheapest sources of power in developing countries. And we intend in Arena to launch an exercise to look again at sustainable hydro and how we can ramp that up. But I believe that we are at a point of transformation. Paris has brought us there. Technology has brought us there, and if we do the right things from here, we can achieve the ambition of the Paris Conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Adnan, you'll be pleased to know this morning I was not here because I was in my hotel room writing my forecast for 2016, in which I predicted another new record level of investment in clean energy. Well, I couldn't. All I said is I hope I said I hoped for. I predicted a new record. There are lots of things that can go wrong, but it won't be an enormous step change this year, in my opinion, because although there's a good set of tailwinds behind the sector, there are also some headwinds, not least of which is the very low oil and gas price. So it's very hard to see investment jump 20%, 30% against not so much low oil prices, but renewable energy, the things that Adnan has been talking about, compete mainly with gas. And there's a lot of natural gas coming into the market internationally, and of course through unconventional gas in the US. And with that, that's actually a very good segue to bring in His Excellency Dr. Rashid Ahmad Al-Fahd, the Minister of Environment and Water here in the UAE, who is of course not just leading the UAE's initiatives in renewable energy, but also across a broader set of technologies, including the traditional ones. So, Your Excellency.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. It's really a pleasure to be in such a panel, and I'd like to reiterate, welcome everybody to Abu Dhabi. Having such an event here in the UAE, it's really adding to the trust of the world in the UAE to be a global player supporting such an effort. Yesterday I had the honor to listen to Christiana and Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Majlis, and she started with the statement that COP21 outcome is the day for her. I think she was right. It's the day that the world finally listened to Sheikh Zayed. Late Sheikh Zayed, who's been a man of the environment, calling for such protection of the environment for the future, and this is the essence that we are working on. So the UAE is in its hands to work together as we work with our Paris. We work with our also friends and brothers in Morocco for the success of the COP22. We in the UAE working, as I said before, with the global community, having Adnan sitting, not just me, but he's sitting in Abu Dhabi. Also, that's also an example of how the UAE is supporting such a global effort. I think there are so many things we are doing in the UAE to showcase what we are doing. To be frank, we don't do it in the UAE for us. We do it to help others also, and to show example, because we believe we have to lead by example. Speaking for the region, I think the region needs example, success story to learn from. And that's what the UAE is doing over the years. We do it, we started, and we share with others. Just a small thing before I country, but there was also some of the contribution the UAE has done to go to Paris, to make Paris success. The UAE led a global effort to work with the Montreal Protocol. There was a lot of debate on such gases, and finally we reached just before the Paris meeting for Dubai pathway, and that's really helped. It's been really a big success, and to make a positive start for the Paris meeting. So the Paris meeting, we are happy and supportive for the outcome of the Paris meeting. We, the UAE, we went to Paris with our NDCs clear for our supporting our growth, and part of it is our national target of 24% from renewable, I believe, and we will go higher than that. With my colleague Minister of Energy sitting here, and I know with the project we're having here in the UAE currently, I think we'll go higher than the 24%. That was a conservative target, but I know we'll go higher than that. As you all know, in the UAE, we are, since before the Rio meetings, Summit 2012, we launched our national green growth strategy. This strategy paved the way to transform our economy into a green, sustainable economy. We are doing a lot in that strategy. The whole nation now really working with the leadership of our Prime Minister. Really we are reaching our target. We finished really with many things that leading to capitalize when it comes to renewable energy, when it comes to infrastructure of energy efficiency. We've done a lot. Look at the UAE, by the way, UAE was the third country in the world to be voluntarily assessed its ecological footprint. From that, now our air conditioning that we are enjoying is all energy efficient. Our lighting system, our household appliances. So this is part of the strategy that we're working with. At the end, the UAE is a water scarce country, just like our neighbors. Just as water is one of the world, I would say it's a top challenge. So that's why our water security being the top of the agenda. So finding the nexus between energy and water always in front of us. That's why we engaging now the renewable energy into our water security. By the way, this water was produced by one of our big-scale renewable energy plant. So it's really a big success story, and maybe you can see some of the models shown there. And this is the product of Masdar, really. So this is part of it. We're getting from Masdar this knowledge base and research center that we are proud of. So this is one of the products that we're getting, not just energy, but how to make energy into our water security. So the story, the sustainability story of the UAE continues, and that's what we are sharing. Having everybody here at Abu Dhabi Sustainability is really what the UAE is working with. We should work together. And as I said, we should have this meeting here with our Abu Dhabi Global Day is really to launch collective global work to make the Paris Agreement a success. And I think, and we believe we can make it. As we did in Paris, we can do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. If we ever needed an illustration of the water energy nexus, in my mind it will always be now this bottle, which is, it says on it, I hadn't noticed it before, but the Renewable Energy Desalination Pilot Plant. Is that related to the Shams solar thermal plant?
It's a different project. That Shams is the solar park. This one is for desalination, powered by solar. So this is how you plug off. Because we have to make we have aligned desalination as our main source of getting our water. But this technology needs to be customized, needs to be more, I would say, carbon friendly. That's why and energy really is an energy-intensive process. Having it integrated with the renewable energy will be, I believe, we can have a sustainable water resource. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm struggling a little bit to hear because of the echoes, which is why I'm still using it's not asking for translation, but to hear better. But that technology, solar desalination, I'm not sure if the one you're referring to is a French technology that I'm aware of, called ale water, but it's a tremendously promising direction for development. And, Minister O'Meara, some of those themes that you raised are themes that I've been thinking about the growth of clean energy because they're around phase change. They're not just about adding a little bit of clean energy to the mix. They're about really changing fairly fundamentally the whole system. Do you agree with that?
Okay, I agree with you. I mean, just my question. When we start to our problem in the renewable energy, one of the biggest problems that we have is how to find the financing for this. And I discussed a lot of this with Mr. and just when we started, we found that we have a huge interest in our problems. Because when you are in a power purchase agreement and the state is guaranteeing the power, of course we can have them. So we have now financing from around the world.
And certainly that matches the experience that I've had working with our clients, that a well-structured project in a country that has created the correct macroeconomic and sovereign risk management frameworks has no problem financing projects at low interest rates, at low cost of capital. The reason I brought in this question of phase change and shifts, Laurence Tubiana, you are the ambassador and special representative of the French government for COP21, but we first met when you were working on the plan for France and for France's own transitions. So perhaps you could give us your thoughts, having listened to the contributions from your other panelists, on Paris, how to create action, but also how to spur that action to really be transformatory.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for reminding me that we were in this very difficult debate for France, which was really to understand how much, on the long term, the electricity mix of France has to change, and beyond that we should go for a very sort of sober economy in terms of energy consumption. That was a big discussion we had in France, that to decarbonize the economy, we have to put more electricity into the system, we have to decarbonize 100% this electricity, but basically we have to consume 50% less energy. So this combination of energy efficiency, really reasonable type of consumption, plus the modernity of the technology is what at stake. And probably drawing from that, I think I make put a lot of attention that in the text of Paris, we invite all countries to design their long-term strategies by 2050, compatible, consistent with 1.52 degrees C target. Meaning all these, what we are saying on the decarbonization of electricity and all the needs, of course, of more energy in many countries, much less than others. This is a long-term thinking that it is the only condition to get there. And of course, that was my first idea when I began to try to work at that in this agreement, on the text, on the ideas, of course, much before writing together anything was all the parties, was the idea we need to think long-term because the transformation, how we put numbers, is this a very deep transformation. And we have to be conscious about that to create the awareness of the depths And beginning the discussion, it was sometimes very sort of surprising that there was a sort of a dissonance, a cognitive dissonance between saying this is 2 degrees C, or even for some countries hoping for 1.5, and the conclusion for themselves, the consequences for the long-term strategy for themselves. And I won't cite, of course, any country in particular, but for every government it's difficult. And another example, working with my good friends from Chile, they told me when, climate change was always a very important political issue, but when they began to design their policies, then things changed, not because they were less enthusiastic, but they realized what does it mean for transport, for buildings, for land management, and for, of course, energy. And I think this is the main virtue. I think somebody said it's about domestic policies, Adnan said that. That's the value of the Paris Agreement, is everyone is really looking inside. Everyone is looking long term. And everyone is thinking, wow, we are in another game. It's no more incremental or doing nice things. It's about how we transform the economy in a way that is compatible with economic growth, increasing offer of jobs, and more health and whatever, all the sustainable development goals most of you have raised. So it's a way of the change of mindset, which I think this is a value for us, not because we have a value movement, because it asks every country to be serious about their long-term plans. In these long-term plans, if you want to be serious about the 2 degrees C, then you have a series of consequences in technology, in finance, in governance, in incentives, that I think is the real precious value of this exercise. And I think that's why I think we can do much better than the INDCs we have today, because it was the first time. It was the first time ever that more or less 190 countries thought about 2030. In many countries, you never do that. And how this is about transformation time. For this reason, in my view, many countries were rather conservative because they want to deliver what they promised. But now, if we do more, if we are accelerate the transformation of financing, and just look at the Article 2 of the agreement, it says, all of the points, we have to reorient finance to the green economy. If you look at all this, what does it mean? Again, taken back to the domestic discussion, then, and because there is such a lot of efforts on technology, because now we can have a focus, an alignment of objective, and that I think will allow countries to go much beyond this sort of first evaluation of the potential. And for me, that's totally essential. That's why I think, together with Christiana, we think that we have to accelerate action now, during these next 5 years. Why? Because to allow countries and governments to have a more mature, more optimistic, more forward-looking discussion in 2020 or even before than we have today. So that's, you're totally right, Michael. Maybe we will not have step change next year, but if really there is a serious thinking in every country, if we make this effort on technology to cut the costs, if we invest differently, then the condition in 2020 will be very different from today.
Thank you very much. Thomas, you said that we might not have step change by 2020, but we have, Minister Amara is going to be presumably very heavily involved in the preparations for Marrakesh, and he's here with us. Is there anything, Laurence, that you did not get into the Paris Agreement that you would like to, as a commentator, I look at it and I say this agreement was at the outside edge of anything anybody could have expected, so there may be nothing else on your wish list. But if there was anything else that you would like to see cleaned up or added or moved forward or tightened for next year, anything on your list to ask for in Marrakesh?
Yes, maybe elements that I think Minister Fabrice raised in his intervention. I think this dynamism, this evolution nature of the agreement is absolutely central. We have to work more on what does it mean. These 5 years stock take What do we mean? How do we do? How we, in a way, use this momentum as a catalyzer, not only for government, but for the private sector, for the investors. So that, I think, I would like to see in Marrakesh as a discussion, as well as, I don't know, more sort of big project that can redefine the conditions. So on the text, I think we can't go further. But on the nature of what we have to sort of make everybody understand, in my view, an agreement is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we have to enhance that and to give even this new step of confidence for countries. And that, I think, the revision mechanism, the ways that countries are not forced into doing things they don't want, but they are encouraged because there is a lot of optimism, because we will meet every 5 years to say, wow, the conditions have changed. So I would like these details to appear in Marrakesh, as well as, I think, the thinking on transparency to get confidence to the economic actors in particular.
Thank you. Now, we're almost out of time, not quite. What I'd like to do, and I need to ask my panelists to be very succinct, so 1 line or 2 lines, and what I'd like to do is to start with Minister Amara. You might want to respond to that. A closing thought, either responding to Laurence Viana's remark, or perhaps from each of the panelists, one thing you would like to see in 2016, in the run-up to Marrakesh, could be in the energy space, in the climate negotiations, just one thing that you would like to see, and then I will leave it with President Likitoft to give his closing thought on the discussion that he's heard. So, Minister.
أكيد يريد أن يظهر في مراكش يعني بعد أقل من سنة هو بداية حقيقية لتفعيل اتفاق باريس. أنا متفق أن اتفاق باريس اتفاق تاريخي، ويحسب لباريس أنه بغض النظر عن الاتفاق الذي هو موجود أن هناك روح جديدة الآن في المنتظم الدولي. هذه الروح يجب أن تترجم فعليا يعني خلال السنة، ولكن مع مراكش. كذلك لا يحسب لباريس أن كانت هناك مجموعة من الأنشطة التي ارتبطت بجمعيات المجتمع المدني وبالشركات الكبرى وبالفعاليات. هذا الأمر يجب كذلك أن يستمر في مراكش.
Thank you very much. Minister bin Fahd.
Well, I think I can reiterate what he said. It's really, we have to build on the momentum and the trust we gained in Paris. Having you all here in Abu Dhabi, let's seize this opportunity. Let's make use of these 3 days here to really initiate, and we could do a lot.
And now, what can we work on this year?
Well, in addition to bring to my brother Abu Hadir, we need to eliminate bureaucracy and delay around multilateral finance.
Very interesting. I look forward to hearing more of the details of that. You've obviously got something in mind there. Laurence.
Adding to what I said, I think finance and technology should be the sort of the focus to concentrate on this year, to know what kind of mechanism. And again, on finance, I think we are not still there. So I would appreciate helping Adnan and others to work on that.
Okay, very good. Finance coming up, a popular theme to be working on that. Christiana, this is a year in which this is your lap of honour, you could almost say. What are you expecting from the year? What would you like to see?
As my closing thought, it has just been occurring to me as I listen to this discussion that we used to live in a world in which the market determined what was possible. The market buttressed by policy, technology, and finance. In 2016 and henceforth, we're in a different world. We're now in a world in which the community, the global community, decides what it wants and what it needs. And then we allow the markets, buttressed by policy, technology, and finance, to get us where we want to go. It is a very different world.
Thank you very much. And give the closing words to President Likitoft. You've been listening very intently to how, and I suppose the question is how does all of this support and fit into the larger framework of the Sustainable Development Goals for which you are primarily responsible?
Well, as I said at the outset, the great benefit, but also the great challenge about these great goals is that they are not yet anchored sufficiently in the general public and with all the different actors. So what we have to do, and what we were trying to do also from New York, from the United Nations, is to involve everyone even more. National governments to be accountable, to make plans, to report, local governments to be involved even much more, the private sector, the social institutions, the civil society actors, and ordinary citizens. And I very much agree with Christian. This is about quite a new economy where we will have to make the intelligent regulations of the markets, the intelligent framework of the markets, to make it actually possible for all the actors to act and react in the right way in order to fulfill those goals. There will have to be much more awareness of this, and there will have to be much more awareness of the total interconnectivity of the goals. You will not reach any of them if you don't make an attack on every one of them. And then of course, financing, we mentioned that by all of us, we have to create these new and integrated partnerships built upon what was announced in Paris, but have integrated all kinds of private sector much more. And I think Adnan had very concrete ideas. I hope we can take them on his very innovative thinking also in the building of multinational financing, including, let me say that as the final point, including that we keep governments to their obligations on providing the ODA, the support for the poorest countries in this world. Because otherwise we will not, either in the field of sustainable development, have more equality in this world. Then we will have more inequality, where some of the most vulnerable countries will be unable to live up to the conditions, the goals we defined in New York and in Paris. But I'm sure we can do it, but I'm sure that it takes every one of us here to remind our leaders, nationally and locally, about it every day, every month, in the time to come.
Thank you very much.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, we've heard about the Sustainable Development Goals, the climate goals, how some of this fits together. It is complex, it's an architecture. We've heard how it fits together. We've heard also examples of enormous progress. We're not there yet, not in any country, not in any sector, not in any industry. We've heard about some of the areas we have to work on, whether it's geothermal, hydro, transport, or just further implementation in renewable energy, energy efficiency. We've heard a lot about technology, policy, and finance, and I can't possibly add anything to the remarks of the panelists in those regards. We need to be playing with the full set of tools in each of those areas. The only other thing I would add, though, is one thing which has been mentioned a few times, but I want to put it firmly in our thoughts as we finish this great session, and that is leadership. Leadership. None of this happens without leadership. We've got some great leaders here on the panel. It's been a display of leadership bringing this this event together over years now by the leadership of Abu Dhabi. I'd like to thank them, and I'd like you and I to thank our panel.